Hello, everyone. I am Corey Andrew Powell, and I am really thrilled today to be joined by Juliana Newland. And she's an accomplished author, communication expert, and seasoned professional in the realms of public affairs and writing. Juliana's journey from her roots in Indianapolis to her diverse career spanning Fortune 500 companies and more offers a wealth of insights into navigating the modern workplace. Juliana, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here and look forward to our conversation.
Yes, me too. And as I was mentioning, I know we were going to try and do this a couple weeks ago, but things came up and we had to reschedule. And I'm so happy that here we are. And I was really excited to talk to you because we share a passion for communication and language and words, which is everything to me. So I would love just a little background. When did you become so impassioned about communication and language?
Well, I'm an English major and a political science major with a Bachelor of Arts in college. I was the editor of our college newspaper for 2 years. And I just have always loved writing, even in grade school, elementary school, and high school. All of the jobs that I had involved a lot of writing skills. I had to have writing skills in order to do the jobs. I enjoy writing. And after I retired, I thought I now have time. I can write a book.
Hmm.
So I decided to write a book. But writing has always been a passion of mine.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And like I said, me too. I didn't realize really, you probably feel the same way. I didn't realize that it's not something that everyone can do well. I mean, not, and I'm not saying that judgmentally. I mean, some people struggle with some things that are just innately easier for others when it comes to grammar and punctuation. And so,
Yes. Oh,
um,
yeah.
yeah, right. Just lean into it, I guess, if you can do it.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So, as I mentioned, you've had a career, of course, spanning over a few decades, different industries and all kinds of really like wonderful, like nuanced experiences and all those different industries and areas. So can you share some highlights or pivotal moments for you that really you think you would say have shaped who you are professionally?
My job that I had with the Fortune 500 company was in public affairs. So it was an external facing job that required me to have a lot of communications with lawmakers in Indiana and governors and their staff people. So I had the opportunity, I think, several times along that venture to learn a lot about myself and about effective communications and how to be able to convince someone of your point of view without being too overbearing. So I think I don't know that I could point to any one specific. There were so many different pivotal moments during that 24-year career, but it was very eye-opening. And I was the first female brought into this position in my department as the manager of public affairs. So I was sort of a interesting species that the guys looked at and wondered, well, what's she doing here? I said, well, I'm going to do my job.
Yeah. And it's funny too with that because so often women bring just a unique perspective. Well, first, we all individually do, but I think when you find that women are finally getting into certain roles where they had not been there before, to me, it's always been these wonderful, like new ways of looking
Mm.
at things that maybe the men or the boys club didn't really quite grasp that women go in there and just kind of have a different ability to disrupt things. But I think it's interesting that you also talk about the glass ceiling, so to speak, and it's still there in many ways. So
Oh, yes.
what's your thought on that?
Well, it is still there, but my opinion is it's less pervasive now than it was when I first started working, and even within the last 10 years. There was actually a study done by Harvard University Business School that looked at the glass ceiling in different employment, different with different employers, and found that yes, in fact, it still does exist. And they looked at managers, male managers and female managers, and found that male managers were more likely to promote other male employees, even though they're all equal in skill sets, with whereas a female manager would promote the men and the women equally, being
Hmm.
that their skill sets were the same. So the
Hmm.
Harvard study also said, in addition to the glass ceiling, we have a sticky floor. which means that a lot of women can't even get up the rungs
Hmm.
to hit the glass ceiling, and they're stuck in lower level paying positions, and they're not really given the opportunity to move their way up. I
Hmm.
glibly blame this on the good old boys club that
Hmm.
exists in many places, and I think it's just basically a form of tribalism. I think many men support other men and don't think women are capable. They have biases they bring into the workforce, and they don't think women are capable of doing manager types of jobs.
Hmm. No, well, there's a couple of things that I thought of as you said that. One is that we see well documented history for, if not decades, centuries, of course, of women, when given the opportunity, excelling. So it's
Mm,
shocking to me that in 2024, when a corporation's main focus should be their bottom line, that they're not promoting who's better for the job, but based on gender, which is so self-defeating at this stage in the game. It's incredible.
yes, I
Yeah.
agree wholeheartedly. Yes,
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah, and I can't believe how much farther we'd be, probably even as a company, as a country, if all those things, if everybody had a seat at the table equally. Um, do you think that means that men are, not to get to like maybe medical, clinical analysis, but do you think that study indicates that men are just innately designed that way? I mean, we can call it tribalism, but I mean, if there, I mean, is there any hope that men will think differently if we're at this stage in the game and
I
they're still
think
doing
so.
that?
I
Hmm.
think so. And I think the way to make that happen is for women to really advocate for themselves and other women, and find those opportunities where they can lead teams or head up a project that involves men and women, and especially if it's interdepartmental with another department, and then they have an opportunity to show their skills and to say, yes, indeed, I can do this, and then make sure their boss knows that so they can get a promotion if warranted.
Yes, I have noticed with the successful women I've had in the show, many who were like a big corporations like PepsiCo, and it's been an
uh,
honor to read the books that they've written. And one of them was a book called "You Should Smile More," of course, which is what this woman was always told by her male bosses from a very sexist and misogynistic perspective. Um, but I think that what she also said was similar to what you said. Like when women find themselves in positions of power, however that happens, and when they get there, it has to happen that people who look like you are the ones who will be likely to help you come
mm.
forward. You need those people who get there first. However, do you see that there's sometimes an issue with the competition? There's a really interesting dynamic in the African American community that we talk about sometimes amongst ourselves called the crab in the barrel syndrome, which is a person of prominent, a black person may get a prominent position and a role, and they won't hire other African Americans because they need to maintain. This is just a small dynamic, but it's there in some cases. And I wonder with women, is that dynamic in place too? Because if it would seem we'd have more women in place because there are women in key making positions.
I think it still exists, but if we think about the sticky floor, it can be that that the female, let's say, director or vice president, just in that position has not done enough to bring women into projects and into roles where they can succeed. The other thing that I'm a big proponent of is mentors.
Mm,
And I think that if women reach out to other women to be a mentor, especially if they're a position above or two positions above, and not necessarily just women, I think men need to be educated about the important role that women can play in the workforce. And I've had both female and male mentors in my career. And I've always tried to reach out to other new women who've come on board and help them navigate the snakes and the pitfalls that they
yeah.
encounter.
Yeah, no, I've seen some wonderful organizations where like specific mentorship groups for women that someone would create because of that very thing. They know how difficult it is for women to get in, so they create these
Uh-huh.
kind of peer mentorship programs. And then even if you break it down further, then I'll see them for women of color. There'll be that division and where there's so a person can go into an organization and see someone other than themselves reflected and know there's someone they can talk to. And so you're right. I mean, it's people, deciding to do more who can make a difference. And you also talk about what I love is the conversation when it comes to how to uh, best deal with kind of work politics and the social structure of work. Backstabbers,
Uh,
backstabbers primarily, which people will trample over you in a opportunity driven situation to try to get ahead. So, what's been your experience with backstabbers, and how do you actually suggest people deal with them?
that's a good question. I have encountered backstabbers, and when I calm down, I usually generally try to make sure I can meet with the person face to face and find out exactly, make sure we both have the same understanding of what happened,
Mm,
why it happened, and how I feel, what I think about it, and what they think about it, and trying to come to a resolution. It may have been a complete misunderstanding on my part or their part. And once you talk to each other, you could settle the issue. But workplaces are just like society. I mean, it's a microcosm of society, and you have aggressive people, and you have introverts, and you have backstabbers.
mm,
And I think it's more pronounced in the workforce, in the workplace setting, because there's a lot of pressure and a lot of competition to
yeah.
succeed and get that promotion so you can be in a higher position. So I think the best thing is communication. I think you can't let it go. I think you have to have a chat with that person and say, "This is how I feel. Well, based on what you did. Now, what's your reaction?"
Mm. And I love that you bring up the microcosm analogy because that's very true. Because as you were speaking about that, I was thinking, you know what, that is how life should work as well. And I know a lot of us in our lives have, before we realize that, reacted to someone or someone reacted against us or toward us, as opposed to us going to the person and saying, hey, I don't like what you did, and here's what it is, and here's how we should work through that.
Uh-huh.
We don't do that enough. And I know that's a little Pollyanna-ish, perhaps. We all, because it's not easy.
True.
But you're right. I mean, I think, look, with the microcosm lens on, I mean, that's if we all did that in life, that would actually be a really good model
Yes,
to follow.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Hmm. So when it comes to also people having to go through, I should say, evaluating their work in a work performance situation, that's always a tricky one. One of the things I've always hated about work evaluations are the ones where you're asked by who you report to. They ask of you, well, how do you think you did? Uh, you know, what grade would you give yourself? So it's kind of always tricky because, most people are going to say, well, I think I aced everything, but that's not always the case. So in your professional opinion, how does a person navigate a successful performance review?
Well, first of all, they need to be confident, but not overly confident. It's a fine line, and they need to be well prepared with data and measurable outcomes. Because if you're going to say, "I did this job and I did it well," you have to be able to document metrics of going from here to A to B. And also, if you can get other managers whom you have worked with on projects to talk to your manager about the good work that you brought to the table. I think that helps.
Hmm.
Talk to your mentor and rehearse your discussion with her or him, or with even with a peer. And always just be prepared, and be you have to really do a critical analysis of yourself. And I have found over the years that just, I hate to say this, but just doing what's on your job description is not good enough. You have to
Yeah.
go above and beyond in order to get a pay raise or to get a promotion. And you can't go in and say, well, I did everything on my job description. That's not going to cut it.
Mm. Again, another microcosm observation, right? Because in real life, that's how that works too. You do the bare minimum or the basics, and that's the result that you're going to sort of get back versus going that extra mile, doing more than
Mhm.
someone else. That's going to yield different results. So again, that's another comparison um, in real life that we can make. And when it comes to your passion, though, again for storytelling, I do wonder too, you know, the career trajectory that you've had, communication played a really big part. So I was wondering, like, how did you integrate sort of that passion into all your roles? You mentioned you were a writer in many of those opportunities, but did you go in as a writer or did they just discover, hey, she's here for this role, but she can really write?
Well, I think it was a little bit in the middle that the jobs that I applied for, it was very clear in the job description that I needed to write newsletters or speeches or testimony. So I knew that going in.
Mhm.
And I think once my managers found that I had a talent or a knack for this, they would give me oh, could you write this for me? Or could you write this for this manager? So I was able to spread my wings a little bit there and not be confined into a narrow box of topics to write about.
Absolutely. And also when it comes to something like that, I think it's really about knowing your skills and talents. Last
Mhm.
month, well, actually this month, I think we're still in internship month. This is like National Internship Awareness Month. And one of the things we talk about is when interns go into a role, don't be afraid to tell what skills you have so that you're not relegated to just making copies or getting coffee on
Right.
an internship. And I always share with them that I was a copywriter, amateur copywriter when I did my first internship. And I happened to mention, hey, I can write. And it led to me writing on-air promos for a TV show. And I'm like, wow. So it's like, speaking up if you have these extra skills in general are a way,
Exactly.
yeah, a way to,
Exactly.
to really shine. And I love your thoughts about, I want you to share them, the wallflower to a butterfly. Now, when you talk about that, is there a little self-reflection in that for yourself, or you mean in general?
Probably so. I think I was less introverted as I spent more years in the workplace, and my job for the Fortune 500 company just required a lot of chatting, small talk, and big issues talk with lawmakers.
Mm,
And you have 2 to 3 minutes of their time, so you have to be very precise as to what you say and how quickly you could say it and how effective you could be. But I started out as more of a wallflower, and then I just kind of pulled myself into more conversations with peers and with lawmakers and other people, depending on what the situation was.
mm. And what do you think was your biggest challenge in that and in some of those instances? Was it about maybe just being personable, or was it about sort of trying to engage with them in general, or was it a combination of all the above? Like, what was the actual obstacle that you had to
I
overcome?
really think a combination of all the above. One skill that is challenging is to be able to read people and be able to read, how much attention are they going to give to you? What are the no things that you don't want to talk about with them, or they don't want to hear about, I should say. And just to have that set, that sort of inner sense and be able to pick up on cues on
Mm,
body language as to what would be the good things to talk about, what they're interested in. I think you have to open your day with a basic 3 or 4 things that if you're in a situation, what you could talk about, be it national news or local news or your family or things like that, that they might be interested in hearing about.
mm. And do you think it was one of your most passionate jobs? Would you say was working doing the public affairs and government work, or was there something that was even more greater of a passion for you than that
That
one?
was my most passionate, and I was fortunate to be able to also do some community service with boards and commissions in areas that I was interested in, which is public health And I had a nephew who was a student at the Indiana School for the Blind.
Mm,
So I spent time on that board and helped them with their budgeting and things like that. So I think, yes, the 24 years I spent for the Fortune 500 company was very challenging. And I will be honest, in my first 6 months, I almost quit.
mm,
I thought, I can't do this. This is really too much. I just can't handle it. And a friend of mine said, give it 6 months. Don't evaluate now, evaluate in 6 months. And in 6 months, I convinced myself that I could do it just fine.
mm. I love that. See, and that also speaks to just hanging in there a little bit, not giving up
Mhm.
so quickly, because most of us are willing to give up, throw their hands up really easily when things are adverse for us. So I love that lesson as well. And do you think you have any sort of words or wisdom for anyone who may also be looking to get into that line of work with public affairs or government relations, especially today when, you said you're retired now, but it seems like it's such a divisive landscape, no matter where we turn, politics and social aspects. What advice would you give to someone today looking to get into that line of work?
Well, they have to have a passion for it because, as you say, it is divisive and it can be very disheartening
Mm,
once they get, depending on the job that they have. But if they're working, let's say, for the Congress, then there is a lot of divisiveness there. They have to be able to deal with that and understand how best to represent their congressperson and do the job for that congressperson. But having internships, I think trying to do an internship is a good start with any of these jobs, be it for the governor or the mayor or the legislature or for a not-for-profit group. Many of them have internships, and then you can learn on the job and roll into a permanent position.
hmm Yeah, we see today, especially when it comes to the demographic of Gen Z, we hear a lot about Gen Z, and that's a demographic that really demands corporate responsibility from a lot of organizations today. They're definitely not like past generations where before they sign up to work for a company, they really need to know that company's position on social components
Uh-huh.
and what their beliefs are. And so it's a pretty prominent part of the landscape now for Gen Z that corporate responsibility is a big thing. Did you see a lot less of that, I guess, in previous generations where corporations didn't really maybe feel they had uh, a responsibility to the public, or did you feel that for the most part everyone kind of got the assignment and they were willing to deliver?
I think that it has evolved over time. I think that when I first started back in the 1990s, a long time ago, um, there was not as much sensitivity by corporations to public affairs issues or to community service issues. And I think the corporations have come around to the right thinking, which is these are our customers. I mean, the people who live in our neighborhoods and who go to our schools, same schools, they're our customers. And we have to have a better understanding of what it is that we can do, what our civic responsibilities are, and what we
Hmm.
can do to help with these different organizations, help them reach out to the poor, the underserved, or other or disabled veterans, etc.
That's a great point too, because it makes me think of today well, I was not today, but previously, maybe a few years ago, the push to expand DE&I efforts, inclusivity efforts. And that seemed to be going pretty well, I thought, from an observational standpoint. And now all of a sudden, there are certain institutions and organizations that are pushing back and doing away with that. And just as a personal thought, what's going through your mind when you see sort of like this, what seems to be like an effort to roll back inclusivity programs and DE&I programs? Or have you
Oh,
not thought about it at all? I don't know.
I have thought about it and I don't like it.
Hmm.
I think that these programs have been very helpful. The last job I had a very good DEI program and it's still in effect. And I thought it was very good. I learned a lot about different cultures And I thought it was very useful. I am sad to see the pushback and the effort to roll them back at the college level, especially, and
Mhm.
in the workforce. I think that's most unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very disconcerting to me too, and also it's a chicken or the egg thing. Like, well, it's like one exists because it's trying to rectify a problem that existed already beforehand. So it's hard to kind of convince people of that. But we keep fighting the good fight, I guess, and hopefully at the end we'll all be on the same page. Juliana Newland, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today on Motivational Mondays. You are an accomplished author, writer in general, and a communication expert. And we just are happy that you shared your wisdom with us today on Motivational Mondays. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I was happy to be here. Enjoyed our chat.